Michael was a blur of awkward limbs and good intentions. Every afternoon, when the starting gun cracked like a whip across the track, Michael would explode forward with the enthusiasm of a puppy chasing a tennis ball. But somewhere between the starting line and the finish, enthusiasm always gave way to exhaustion, and Michael would watch, with a forced smile, as his teammates crossed the finish line long before he did. He was, without a doubt, the slowest sprinter on the Northwood High track team. And everyone knew it. It wasn't that Michael didn't try. He did. He stretched, he listened to Coach Miller's instructions, mostly, and he even attempted to visualize himself crossing the finish line in first place. But his body just didn't seem to cooperate. His legs felt like lead weights, his lungs burned, and his arms flailed in a way that was more comical than aerodynamic. The other guys on the team, guys like the effortlessly cool and lightning-fast Jake Thompson, tried to be nice. They'd pat him on the back after a particularly dismal race and offer words of encouragement like, "Hey, you almost kept up for the first 10 meters, or, at least you're consistent." Michael would laugh along, pretending that their gentle ribbing didn't sting. He was a good sport, after all. He knew they weren't trying to be mean. But inside, a little voice whispered that maybe he just wasn't cut out for this. Maybe he should stick to something he was actually good at, like, well, he wasn't quite sure what that was yet. The truth was, Michael loved being part of the track team. He loved the camaraderie, the feeling of pushing himself, and the thrill of competition, even if he was always competing for last place. But the constant losing, the knowing glances, and the barely concealed snickers were starting to wear him down. He'd often lie awake at night, replaying his races in his head, trying to pinpoint where he went wrong. Was it his start? His stride? His breathing? He'd search online for tips and tricks, watch videos of Olympic sprinters, and even try to mimic their movements in his bedroom mirror, much to the amusement of his younger sister, Emily. He kept his nightly research and bedroom workouts a secret. He didn't want anyone to think he was taking himself too seriously. After all, he was just Michael, the guy who always came in last. What would they say if they knew he was secretly dreaming of crossing the finish line first? The embarrassment was a constant companion. It was there when he walked onto the track, when he lined up for a race, and especially when he trailed behind everyone else. He tried to brush it off, to tell himself it didn't matter, but it did. It mattered a lot. He wanted to prove them wrong, to show them that he was more than just the team joke. He just didn't know how. Northwood High's track team was a mixed bag of talent and personalities. There was Jake Thompson, the star sprinter, effortlessly gliding across the track with a natural grace that made everyone else look like they were running in slow motion. There was Maria Rodriguez, the fiercely competitive long-distance runner, who trained with a relentless intensity that bordered on obsessive. And then there was Michael, the well-meaning but perpetually last-place sprinter. The team was a close-knit group, bound by shared sweat, early morning practices, and the constant pursuit of personal bests. They cheered each other on, offered words of encouragement, and celebrated victories together. But there was also an unspoken hierarchy, a pecking order determined by speed and performance. And Michael, unfortunately, occupied the very bottom rung. He was the team's unofficial mascot, the guy everyone felt sorry for, the one whose races were often punctuated by nervous laughter and sympathetic groans. He was the butt of countless jokes, most of them good-natured, but some that stung more than others. Jake and his group of friends often teased Michael, but they also helped him with his form and offered tips on improving his speed. They saw him as a harmless, lovable goofball, someone who added a certain levity to the team. Maria, on the other hand, was less forgiving. She valued results above all else and couldn't understand why Michael even bothered to show up if he knew he was going to lose. But there was one person on the team who saw something more in Michael, Coach Miller. Coach Miller was a seasoned veteran, a former track star himself, who had seen countless athletes come and go. He had a keen eye for talent, but he also valued hard work, dedication, and perseverance. He knew Michael wasn't the fastest or the most naturally gifted athlete on the team. But he also saw something in Michael that the others didn't, a quiet determination, a willingness to push himself beyond his limits, and a genuine love for the sport. Coach Miller had noticed Michael's secret late-night research and his awkward attempts to mimic Olympic sprinters. He saw the frustration in Michael's eyes after every race, the flicker of disappointment that he tried so hard to hide. He knew Michael had the potential to be more than just the team joke. He saw a spark of greatness within him, a hidden talent waiting to be unleashed. He just needed the right guidance, the right training, and, most importantly, the right motivation. So, Coach Miller took Michael under his wing. He spent extra time working with him on his form, his start, and his breathing. He pushed him harder than he pushed anyone else on the team, knowing that Michael had to overcome not only his physical limitations but also his own self-doubt. He saw a diamond in the rough and was determined to polish it until it shone. He knew it would take time, patience, and a whole lot of hard work. But Coach Miller believed in Michael, even when Michael didn't believe in himself. The air crackled with anticipation. The crowd, a mix of parents, students, and track enthusiasts, buzzed with excitement. The starting line of the 100-meter dash was a tableau of nervous energy. Jake Thompson, the favorite, bounced on the balls of his feet, his eyes focused and intense. Maria Rodriguez, having already dominated the 3,200-meter, leaned against the fence, offering Jake a quick, encouraging nod. And then there was Michael. He stood awkwardly at his assigned lane, fiddling with the laces of his worn-out running shoes. He tried to ignore the whispers and giggles that rippled through the crowd as he took his position. He focused on Coach Miller's instructions: explode off the blocks, drive your knees, and breathe. Easier said than done. The official barked out the commands: runners, on your marks. Get set. Michael crouched low, his heart pounding in his chest. He tried to block out the noise, the pressure, the inevitable humiliation that awaited him. Bang! The starting gun fired, and the runners exploded forward. Jake Thompson surged ahead, his powerful legs eating up the ground. He was a blur of motion, a human rocket propelled by years of training and natural talent. The other runners followed close behind, a tightly packed group battling for position. And then there was Michael. He stumbled slightly out of the blocks, his arms flailing wildly. He struggled to find his stride, his legs feeling heavy and uncoordinated. He watched in dismay as the other runners pulled further and further ahead, their bodies shrinking into the distance. The crowd's cheers faded as Jake crossed the finish line, a clear winner. The other runners followed in quick succession, their faces etched with exhaustion and satisfaction. Michael, however, was still running. He was far behind, a lone figure struggling to reach the finish line. The crowd's cheers had turned into polite applause, mixed with a few sympathetic shouts of encouragement. Some people were already packing up their belongings, eager to move on to the next event. He could feel his lungs burning, his legs aching. He wanted to stop, to give up, to disappear. But he couldn't. He had to finish. He had to prove to himself, if no one else, that he could do it. Finally, with a final burst of effort, he crossed the finish line. He was panting, sweating, and utterly exhausted. He glanced at the clock, his heart sinking. Another last-place finish. The crowd offered a smattering of applause, a mixture of pity and relief that the race was finally over. Jake Thompson slapped him on the back, offering a half-hearted, "Good job, Mike." Maria Rodriguez simply shook her head and walked away. Michael forced a smile, trying to ignore the burning shame that washed over him. He was used to this. He was used to being the slowest. He was used to being the team joke. But that didn't make it any easier. As he walked off the track, he couldn't help but wonder if Coach Miller was starting to regret taking him under his wing. Maybe he was a lost cause. Maybe he should just quit. The image of Jake's effortless speed and the indifferent faces in the crowd burned in his mind. He knew he had to do something different. He had to find a way to improve. He had to prove them all wrong. The alarm clock shrieked at 5 a.m., a jarring sound that ripped Michael from his sleep. He groaned, burying his face in his pillow, desperately wanting to ignore it. The warmth of his bed beckoned, promising comfort and escape from the physical torment that awaited him. But the memory of the race, the faces in the crowd, and Jake's effortless victory propelled him out of bed. He dressed quickly in the pre-dawn darkness, pulling on his worn-out running shoes and a faded Northwood High t-shirt. He tiptoed past his sister's room, careful not to wake her. He grabbed a banana from the kitchen counter and slipped out the back door, leaving a note for his mom saying he'd gone for a run. The air was crisp and cold, the sky a pale gray. The only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the distant hum of traffic. He began his warm-up routine, stretching his stiff muscles and jogging slowly down the deserted street. His training ground was the old, neglected track behind the community center. The track was cracked and overgrown with weeds, a far cry from the pristine surface of the Northwood High track. But it was private, secluded, a place where Michael could push himself without fear of judgment or ridicule. He started with sprints, pushing himself to run faster and faster, his legs burning with each stride. He focused on Coach Miller's instructions, trying to maintain proper form and breathe rhythmically. He ran until his lungs ached and his legs felt like they were about to give way. Then came the plyometrics, a series of jumping exercises designed to build explosive power. He jumped over hurdles, hopped on one leg, and performed countless box jumps, each repetition pushing his body to its limit. He stumbled, he fell, he scraped his knees, but he kept going. He finished his workout with a series of core exercises, strengthening his abdominal muscles and improving his balance. He planked until his arms trembled, he did sit-ups until his stomach burned, and he performed countless leg raises, each one a testament to his unwavering determination. The physical struggle was immense. His body screamed in protest, his muscles ached, and his lungs burned. There were moments when he wanted to quit, to give up, to collapse on the track and never get up again. But he pushed through the pain, fueled by his desire to improve, to prove himself, and to silence the doubters. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Michael collapsed on the track, his body drenched in sweat. He was exhausted, but he was also exhilarated. He had pushed himself harder than he ever had before. He knew he still had a long way to go, but he was making progress. He was getting stronger, faster, and more confident. He knew his secret training routine was taking a toll on his body. He was constantly tired, his muscles were always sore, and he was struggling to keep up with his schoolwork. But he was willing to sacrifice everything to achieve his goal. He was determined to transform himself from the team joke into a legitimate contender. He was determined to win. He was determined to prove them all wrong. The early morning struggles were his own private battle, a testament to his dedication and the secret weapon he hoped would change everything. One particularly grueling morning, as Michael was dragging himself home from the track, his legs heavy and his spirits low, he noticed an elderly man sitting on his porch across the street. The man, Mr. Peterson, was a fixture in the neighborhood, known for his quiet demeanor and his meticulously kept garden. Michael had seen him countless times, but they had never spoken. Mr. Peterson was sitting in a wheelchair, his legs covered by a blanket. He was watching Michael with a knowing look in his eyes. As Michael approached, Mr. Peterson smiled. "Morning, Michael," he said, his voice raspy but kind. Michael was surprised. "Good morning, Mr. Peterson," he replied, unsure what to expect. "I see you out here every morning, working hard," Mr. Peterson said, gesturing towards the track with a nod of his head. "You've got dedication, son. That's something special." Michael blushed, embarrassed that his secret training had been discovered. "Just trying to improve," he mumbled. "Improving takes more than just running," Mr. Peterson said, his eyes twinkling. "It takes heart, it takes discipline, and it takes someone to believe in you." He paused, then added, "I used to be a runner, you know. Back in my day, I was pretty fast." Michael's eyes widened. He had never imagined that Mr. Peterson, the quiet old man in the wheelchair, had once been an athlete. What happened? Michael asked hesitantly. Mr. Peterson sighed. An accident, he said, his voice tinged with sadness. Ended my running career in an instant. But it didn't end my love for the sport. He invited Michael to sit on the porch with him. As they talked, Michael learned that Mr. Peterson had been a track star in college, a sprinter who had dreamed of competing in the Olympics. He had won countless races, broken records, and earned the respect of his peers. Mr. Peterson shared his knowledge of running with Michael, offering tips on everything from proper form to mental preparation. He explained the importance of visualization, the power of positive thinking, and the need to believe in oneself, even when faced with adversity. The body can only do what the mind believes, Mr. Peterson said. If you don't believe you can win, you never will. Mr. Peterson became Michael's mentor, his confidant, and his biggest supporter. He watched Michael's training sessions from his porch, offering encouragement and advice. He helped Michael refine his technique, improve his strength, and develop his mental toughness. He also shared stories of his own struggles and setbacks, reminding Michael that everyone faces challenges, but it's how you overcome them that defines you. Mr. Peterson's guidance was invaluable. He not only provided Michael with the technical knowledge he needed to improve, but he also instilled in him a sense of self-belief and determination that he had never possessed before. He was the voice of reason, the steady hand that guided Michael through the rough patches, and the unwavering source of encouragement that kept him going when he felt like giving up. Michael finally had someone who truly believed in him, someone who saw his potential, and someone who was willing to help him achieve his dreams. Weeks turned into months, and Michael's secret training continued. Guided by Mr. Peterson's wisdom and driven by his own unwavering determination, he began to see tangible results. His times during his early morning sessions at the community center track steadily improved. He shaved fractions of a second off his sprints, his jumps became more explosive, and his endurance increased. Mr. Peterson meticulously tracked Michael's progress, charting his times on a graph and analyzing his form. He pointed out subtle improvements, celebrated small victories, and offered constructive criticism when needed. He made Michael believe that he was capable of achieving his goals. In practice, Michael was a different runner. He was faster, stronger, and more confident. He exploded off the blocks with a newfound intensity, his legs driving him forward with purpose. He maintained his form throughout the race, his arms pumping rhythmically and his breathing controlled. He was finally starting to feel like a real sprinter. However, something strange happened when he stepped onto the track for official meets. The pressure of the crowd, the expectations of his teammates, and the weight of his past failures seemed to paralyze him. He would tense up, his form would falter, and his speed would diminish. In race after race, Michael continued to finish last. Despite his improvements in training, he couldn't seem to translate his progress to the competitive arena. The jokes and taunts continued, and the sympathetic glances grew more frequent. Coach Miller remained supportive, but Michael could sense a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Even Mr. Peterson, despite his unwavering belief in Michael, seemed puzzled by his inability to perform under pressure. "It's like there's a mental block," Mr. Peterson said one afternoon, as they sat on his porch after a particularly disheartening race. "You've got the physical ability, but you're letting your mind hold you back." Michael knew Mr. Peterson was right. He was sabotaging himself, allowing his fears and insecurities to control him. But he didn't know how to overcome it. He tried everything he could think of, visualization techniques, positive affirmations, even wearing a lucky pair of socks. But nothing seemed to work. The frustration was overwhelming. He was working harder than ever, sacrificing sleep, schoolwork, and social life to pursue his dream. But all his efforts seemed to be in vain. He was trapped in a cycle of improvement in training and failure in competition. The team was scheduled to compete in a regional qualifier in a few weeks. Michael knew that if he didn't improve soon, he would be relegated to the sidelines, watching his teammates compete while he remained a benchwarmer. The thought of that filled him with dread. He had to find a way to break through his mental block. He had to find a way to perform under pressure. He had to find a way to finally prove them all wrong. The clock was ticking, and Michael was running out of time. The dual meet against rival school Crestwood High was supposed to be just another tune-up before the regional qualifier. But for Michael, it turned into a nightmare. From the moment he stepped onto the track, he felt an undercurrent of negativity, a palpable sense of ridicule directed solely at him. The Crestwood team, known for their aggressive competitiveness and their even more aggressive trash talk, made Michael their primary target. They heckled him mercilessly, shouting insults and mimicking his awkward running style. Even some of the Northwood students joined in, their laughter echoing across the track. "Hey, Michael, did you bring a map? You're gonna need it to find the finish line," one Crestwood runner yelled. "Careful, Michael, don't trip over your own feet," another taunted. Michael tried to ignore them, to focus on his race. But their words burrowed into his mind, amplifying his insecurities and fueling his self-doubt. He felt his stomach churning, his hands sweating, and his legs turning to lead. The starting gun fired, and Michael stumbled, his mind already defeated. He ran the worst race of his life, finishing so far behind that the other runners were already cooling down by the time he crossed the finish line. The laughter and taunts intensified, reaching a crescendo of cruelty. He could hear snide remarks and mocking applause. Even Jake Thompson seemed embarrassed to be associated with him. Maria Rodriguez just rolled her eyes and shook her head in disgust. As Michael walked off the track, defeated and humiliated, he overheard a group of Crestwood students talking. "Did you see that guy?" one of them said, laughing. "He runs like a baby giraffe." "Yeah, he's a total joke," another replied. "I can't believe he's even on the team." Michael's heart sank. He couldn't take it anymore. The constant losing, the relentless ridicule, the crushing weight of expectations, it was all too much. He felt like he was drowning in a sea of negativity. He walked straight to the locker room, grabbed his bag, and stormed out of the stadium, ignoring Coach Miller's calls. He ran all the way home, tears streaming down his face. He burst into his room, slammed the door shut, and collapsed on his bed, sobbing uncontrollably. He had never felt so dejected, so worthless, so utterly defeated. He thought about all the sacrifices he had made, all the hard work he had put in, all the dreams he had dared to dream. It was all for nothing. He was never going to be a good runner. He was never going to prove them wrong. He was just a joke, a failure, a disappointment. He reached a decision. He was done. He couldn't take the pain anymore. He was going to quit the track team. He was going to give up on his dream. He was going to spare himself the humiliation and the heartache. It was the only way to escape the torment. He felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. It was over. He didn't even bother to go to his secret training spot the next morning. He stayed in bed, hiding from the world, wallowing in his misery. He was finished with running. Or so he thought. Michael stayed in bed for most of the day, ignoring his phone and avoiding any contact with the outside world. He knew Coach Miller was probably trying to reach him, but he couldn't face him. He couldn't face anyone. As the sun began to set, there was a gentle knock on his bedroom door. "Michael?" It was his mom. "Mr. Peterson is here to see you." Michael groaned. He didn't want to talk to anyone, especially not Mr. Peterson. He knew Mr. Peterson would be disappointed in him, that he would try to convince him to keep running. But he was too exhausted to argue. He reluctantly opened the door. Mr. Peterson was sitting in his wheelchair in the hallway, his face etched with concern. He motioned for Michael to come outside. They sat on the porch in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the chirping of crickets. Finally, Mr. Peterson spoke. "I heard about what happened at the meet," he said softly. "I'm sorry, Michael." Michael shrugged. "It doesn't matter," he mumbled. "I'm done with track." Mr. Peterson nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. "It's tough when you're always getting knocked down. It's easy to want to give up. He paused, then looked Michael directly in the eye. But quitting is never the answer, Michael. Especially when you have so much potential. Potential? Michael scoffed. I don't have any potential. I'm always last. I'm a joke. That's not true, Michael, Mr. Peterson said firmly. You have more potential than you realize. You have heart, you have determination, and you have the willingness to work hard. Those are qualities that can't be taught. But I can't perform under pressure, Michael protested. I always choke. I'm never going to be good enough. Pressure is a privilege, Michael, Mr. Peterson said. It means you're in a position to achieve something great. And choking is just a sign that you care. It means you want to succeed. He reached out and placed a hand on Michael's shoulder. The most important thing is to believe in yourself, Michael. To trust your abilities and to never give up on your dreams. You've come so far. You've worked so hard. Don't let a few setbacks derail you. But it's not just a few setbacks, Michael said, his voice cracking. It's every race. I always lose. So what? Mr. Peterson said, his eyes twinkling. Losing is part of the process. It's how you learn, how you grow, and how you become stronger. Every time you fall, you get back up. Every time you fail, you try again. That's what makes you a champion, Michael. Not winning, but persevering. He leaned closer to Michael. You have a fire inside you, Michael. A spark of greatness. Don't let anyone extinguish it. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't achieve your dreams. You are stronger than you think you are. You are more capable than you believe you are. And you are destined for great things. Mr. Peterson's words resonated with Michael. He felt a flicker of hope ignite within him, a small spark of self-belief that he thought had been extinguished. He knew Mr. Peterson was right. He couldn't give up. He had to keep fighting. He had to prove them all wrong. Thank you, Mr. Peterson, Michael said, his voice filled with emotion. I needed to hear that. Anytime, Michael, Mr. Peterson said, smiling. Now get some rest. And I'll see you at the track tomorrow morning. True to his word, Michael was back at the community center track before sunrise the next morning. He was still sore, still tired, and still filled with self-doubt. But he was also determined to make a change. He was determined to prove to himself, and to everyone else, that he could overcome his challenges. He started by analyzing his weaknesses. With Mr. Peterson's help, he reviewed videos of his races, identifying specific areas where he could improve. His start was consistently slow, his stride was inefficient, and his mental focus wavered under pressure. He and Mr. Peterson developed a targeted training plan, focusing on each of these weaknesses. They spent hours working on his start, practicing explosive movements and refining his technique. They adjusted his stride, shortening it slightly to improve his efficiency and reduce his energy expenditure. And they developed mental exercises to help him stay focused and calm under pressure. Michael pushed himself harder than ever before. He ran sprints until his legs burned, he jumped hurdles until he was breathless, and he performed core exercises until his muscles trembled. He visualized success, repeating positive affirmations in his head and imagining himself crossing the finish line in first place. He also made changes to his diet and sleep schedule, ensuring that he was getting the proper nutrition and rest to support his rigorous training regimen. He cut out junk food, ate more fruits and vegetables, and made sure to get at least 8 hours of sleep each night. Mr. Peterson continued to provide guidance and support, offering encouragement, advice, and a listening ear. He reminded Michael of his progress, celebrated his small victories, and helped him stay focused on his goals. Slowly but surely, Michael began to see results. His start became quicker and more explosive, his stride became smoother and more efficient, and his mental focus became sharper and more consistent. He was no longer just running, he was racing. He started to incorporate pressure training into his routine, simulating the conditions of a real race. He would invite friends to watch him train, creating a small crowd to add to the pressure. He would practice running in noisy environments, learning to block out distractions and stay focused on his performance. He even started to engage with the hecklers, responding to their taunts with humor and confidence. He realized that their words only had power if he allowed them to. By taking control of the situation, he was able to neutralize their negativity and turn it into a source of motivation. The regional qualifier was fast approaching, and Michael was feeling more confident than ever before. He knew he still had a long way to go, but he was making progress. He was finally starting to believe in himself. He was finally starting to see himself as a contender. He was finally ready to prove them all wrong. He had a plan, he had the support, and most importantly, he had the will. Now all he needed was the opportunity. The day of the regional qualifier dawned crisp and clear. The atmosphere was electric, buzzing with nervous energy and competitive spirit. Michael felt a mix of excitement and trepidation as he arrived at the track. He saw Jake Thompson confidently warming up, surrounded by admirers. Maria Rodriguez was focused and intense, stretching with a determined look on her face. Michael took a deep breath and tried to calm his nerves. Mr. Peterson met him near the bleachers, offering a reassuring smile. "Just remember everything we've worked on," he said. "Trust your training, believe in yourself, and have fun." Michael nodded, trying to absorb Mr. Peterson's calm demeanor. He knew this was his chance to prove himself, to show everyone that he was more than just the team joke. As he lined up for the 100-meter dash, he could feel the weight of expectations, the whispers, and the skeptical glances. He tried to block them out, focusing on his breathing and repeating his positive affirmations. The starting gun fired, and Michael exploded off the blocks, his start the best it had ever been. He drove his knees, pumped his arms, and maintained his form, running with a newfound intensity and focus. He was neck and neck with the other runners, a tightly packed group battling for position. He could hear the crowd cheering, but he couldn't distinguish their voices. He was in the zone, completely focused on the race. In the final stretch, he felt a surge of adrenaline, a burst of energy that propelled him forward. He crossed the finish line, collapsing onto the track, gasping for air. He had no idea where he had placed. He waited anxiously as the results were posted. He scanned the list, his heart pounding in his chest. His name was near the bottom. He had barely qualified, finishing in the last qualifying spot by a hair's breadth. A wave of relief washed over him. He had done it. He had qualified for the next round. He had proven to himself, and to everyone else, that he was capable of competing at a higher level. The crowd erupted in cheers, a mixture of surprise and admiration. Even Jake Thompson offered a congratulatory pat on the back. Maria Rodriguez gave him a nod of respect. Coach Miller beamed with pride. "I knew you could do it, Michael," he said, clapping him on the shoulder. But the most meaningful reaction came from Mr. Peterson, who was waiting for him near the finish line. He had tears in his eyes and a wide smile on his face. "I'm so proud of you, Michael," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You never gave up. You believed in yourself. And you achieved your goal." Michael hugged Mr. Peterson tightly, feeling a surge of gratitude and appreciation. He knew he couldn't have done it without him. He had barely qualified, but it didn't matter. He was moving on. He was one step closer to his dream. He had surprised everyone, including himself. And he was determined to keep surprising them. The state finals were next, and Michael was ready to give it everything he had. The weeks leading up to the state finals were a blur of intense training and unwavering focus. Michael knew that he had to push himself harder than ever before if he wanted to have any chance of competing against the best sprinters in the state. His physical training became even more rigorous. He increased the intensity of his sprints, pushing his body to its absolute limit. He added more plyometric exercises, building explosive power in his legs. And he continued to refine his technique, perfecting his start, stride, and arm movements. But even more important than the physical training was the mental preparation. Michael spent hours visualizing success, imagining himself running the perfect race. He would close his eyes and picture every detail, the starting gun firing, his feet pounding the track, the crowd cheering, and himself crossing the finish line in first place. He worked with Mr. Peterson to develop mental strategies for staying calm and focused under pressure. They practiced mindfulness exercises, learning to quiet his mind and block out distractions. They developed positive affirmations, repeating empowering statements to build his confidence and self-belief. Michael also studied the competition, watching videos of the other sprinters, analyzing their strengths and weaknesses, and developing strategies for how to beat them. He knew that he couldn't underestimate anyone, that he had to be prepared for anything. He cut out all distractions from his life, focusing solely on training and mental preparation. He stopped watching television, stopped playing video games, and limited his social interactions. He knew that every minute he spent on something other than track was a minute he wasn't improving. He even started keeping a journal, writing down his thoughts, feelings, and goals. He used the journal to track his progress, identify areas for improvement, and celebrate his small victories. He was completely immersed in his training, obsessed with achieving his dream. He knew that the state finals were his last chance to prove himself, to show everyone that he was capable of greatness. He visualized the race so many times that he could practically feel the track beneath his feet, hear the roar of the crowd, and taste the victory. He knew that he had to run the race of his life, that he had to leave everything on the track. The pressure was immense, but Michael refused to let it break him. He had come too far, worked too hard, and sacrificed too much to give up now. He was ready. He was focused. He was determined. He was Michael, the kid who used to finish last, and he was about to shock the world. He was ready to run. He was ready to win. He was ready to prove them all wrong. The state finals awaited. The state finals were held at the prestigious State University track, a sprawling complex that seemed to hum with history and athletic prowess. The air crackled with anticipation, thick with the scent of liniment and the murmur of excited voices. The stadium was packed, the stands overflowing with spectators. Banners from different schools waved proudly, adding splashes of color to the scene. The crowd was a sea of faces, a mix of parents, students, coaches, and track enthusiasts, all eager to witness the culmination of months of hard work and dedication. Michael felt a wave of nerves wash over him as he stepped onto the track. The atmosphere was overwhelming, the pressure immense. He could feel the eyes of thousands of people on him, scrutinizing his every move. He glanced at the other competitors, the best sprinters in the state. They were all tall, muscular, and exuded an aura of confidence and athleticism. He recognized a few of them from his research, the guys who had broken records and won countless races. He felt a surge of self-doubt, wondering if he truly belonged in this elite company. Jake Thompson was there, too, looking relaxed and confident, chatting with some of the other top sprinters. He gave Michael a brief nod, a gesture that felt more like pity than encouragement. Maria Rodriguez was also present, her face set in a determined scowl, focused on her own races. Mr. Peterson was in the stands, his wheelchair parked near the front row, his eyes locked on Michael. He gave Michael a reassuring smile and a thumbs up, a silent message of support and belief. The noise level in the stadium was deafening. The announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeakers, introducing the athletes and hyping up the crowd. The air was filled with the sounds of cheering, clapping, and the rhythmic pounding of drums. The pressure was palpable. Michael could feel it in the air, a heavy weight that threatened to crush him. He knew that this was his moment, his chance to prove himself, to show everyone that he was capable of achieving his dreams. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to focus on his mental preparation. He repeated his positive affirmations, visualized his race, and reminded himself of all the hard work he had put in. He was ready. He was focused. He was determined. He was Michael, the kid who used to finish last, and he was about to show the world what he was capable of. The atmosphere was electric, the pressure intense, but Michael was ready to embrace the challenge and run the race of his life. He would either crumble under the weight, or rise to the occasion and achieve the impossible. The stage was set. The moment of truth had arrived. The announcer called the runners to their marks. Michael walked to his assigned lane, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the eyes of the crowd on him, but he tried to block them out, focusing on his breathing and repeating his positive affirmations. He crouched low, placing his hands on the starting blocks. He closed his eyes and visualized the race, picturing himself running perfectly, crossing the finish line in first place. Runners, on your marks. He took a deep breath, preparing to explode off the blocks. Get set. His muscles tensed, ready to unleash his pent-up energy. Bang! The starting gun fired, and Michael exploded forward, his start the best it had ever been. He drove his knees, pumped his arms, and maintained his form, running with a newfound intensity and focus. He was neck and neck with the other runners, a tightly packed group battling for position. He could see Jake Thompson to his left, running smoothly and effortlessly. He could hear the crowd cheering, but he couldn't distinguish their voices. He stayed with the pack, refusing to let the pressure get to him. He remembered Mr. Peterson's words, "Trust your training, believe in yourself, and have fun." He focused on his breathing, maintaining his form, and pushing himself to run faster and faster. He was in the zone, completely focused on the race. As they approached the final stretch, he felt a surge of adrenaline, a burst of energy that propelled him forward. He dug deep, finding an extra reserve of strength that he didn't know he possessed. He pulled ahead of the pack, his legs churning, his arms pumping. He could see the finish line in front of him, just a few meters away. He gave it everything he had, pushing himself to the absolute limit. He crossed the finish line, collapsing onto the track, gasping for air. He had no idea where he had placed. He closed his eyes, trying to catch his breath. He could hear the crowd cheering wildly, but he couldn't make out what they were saying. He waited anxiously for the results to be announced. The silence seemed to last forever. Finally, the announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. And the winner of the 100-meter dash. Michael Johnson. Michael's eyes widened in disbelief. He had won. He had actually won the state finals. He had done the impossible. He had proven them all wrong. For a moment, Michael lay on the track, stunned into silence. He couldn't believe what he had just accomplished. He had won the state finals. He, Michael Johnson, the kid who always finished last, had beaten the best sprinters in the state. Then, the reality of his victory hit him, and a wave of emotions washed over him. He felt exhilaration, relief, pride, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He sat up, tears streaming down his face, and looked around in disbelief. The crowd was in a frenzy. People were cheering, clapping, and stomping their feet. Banners waved wildly, and the air was filled with the sounds of whistles and horns. It was a scene of pure, unadulterated joy. The shock on the faces of the spectators was palpable. They couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. The underdog, the kid who no one believed in, had pulled off the ultimate upset. Jake Thompson stood on the sidelines, his jaw agape, staring at Michael with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Maria Rodriguez cracked a small smile, a rare display of emotion. Coach Miller rushed onto the track, engulfing Michael in a bear hug. "I always knew you had it in you, Michael," he shouted, his voice hoarse with excitement. "I'm so proud of you." Then, his teammates swarmed him, lifting him onto their shoulders and carrying him around the track. They chanted his name, their voices filled with joy and pride. "Michael! Michael! Michael!" Mr. Peterson wheeled himself onto the track, a beaming smile on his face. He reached out and grasped Michael's hand, his eyes filled with tears. "I told you, Michael," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I told you that you were capable of great things." Michael looked at Mr. Peterson, his heart filled with gratitude. He knew that he couldn't have done it without him. Mr. Peterson had believed in him when no one else did, and he had helped him to unlock his full potential. As he was carried around the track, Michael saw his mom and dad in the stands, their faces beaming with pride. They were jumping up and down, cheering and waving. He felt a surge of love and appreciation for his parents, who had always supported him, even when he was struggling. He had done it. He had achieved his dream. He had proven to himself, and to everyone else, that anything is possible if you believe in yourself, work hard, and never give up. Michael had finally found his moment. Michael had finally crossed the finish line, not in last place, but in first. The team joke became the state champion. The doubters were silenced. The impossible had become reality. Years later, Michael often looked back on that day, the day he won the state finals, the day he transformed from the team joke into a champion. It wasn't just the victory that mattered, but the journey, the struggle, and the lessons he learned along the way. He went on to have a successful track career in college, earning a scholarship and competing at the national level. But even more important than his athletic achievements were the qualities he developed: perseverance, self-belief, and a relentless work ethic. He learned that anything is possible if you believe in yourself, even when everyone else doubts you. He learned that hard work pays off, even when you don't see immediate results. And he learned that setbacks are just opportunities to learn, grow, and become stronger. He often visited Mr. Peterson, sharing stories and reminiscing about the old days. Mr. Peterson continued to be a source of wisdom and inspiration, reminding Michael of the importance of giving back to the community and helping others achieve their dreams. Michael eventually became a track coach himself, eager to share his knowledge and experience with young athletes. He always told them his story, the story of the kid who always finished last, the story of the team joke who became a state champion. He emphasized the importance of perseverance, self-belief, and hard work. He told them that they could achieve anything they set their minds to, as long as they were willing to put in the effort and never give up on their dreams. He taught them that losing is part of the process, that setbacks are opportunities for growth, and that the most important thing is to never stop believing in themselves. Michael's story became an inspiration to countless athletes, a reminder that even the most unlikely individuals can achieve greatness with hard work, determination, and a little bit of help from someone who believes in them. He learned that true success is not just about winning, but about overcoming adversity, inspiring others, and making a positive impact on the world. So, if you're facing challenges, if you're feeling discouraged, if you're doubting yourself, remember Michael's story. Remember the kid who always finished last, the kid who became a champion. Remember that you are stronger than you think you are, more capable than you believe you are, and destined for great things. Just believe in yourself, work hard, and never give up on your dreams. The finish line is closer than you think. And you might just surprise yourself, and the whole world, with what you can achieve. The journey is what matters, and it's a journey worth taking.